Hi all, today we are going to discuss the most important topic of the air cargo, that is dangerous goods regulation. We all know dangerous goods or the DG is the most important consignment or is an important part of the air cargo, which is transporting in an aircraft under certain conditions and also under regulations. So why we are following this condition? Because of the dangerous nature of this air cargo. Okay, so let's see what all things that we can going to learn today's topic. Let's see the definition of dangerous goods in IATA DGR manual. Dangerous goods are articles or substances which are capable of posing risk to health, safety, property or the environment, and which are shown in the list of dangerous goods. So dangerous goods are the substances which is causing risk to health of a person, safety of a person and the property of a person or the environment. Then we can classify it, or then we can say that is a dangerous goods. Okay. Some DG or dangerous goods are too dangerous to be carried by aircraft. Others may be carried on cargo aircraft only, and some are acceptable on both cargo and passenger aircraft. So based on the nature of this dangerous goods, we can transport this dangerous goods in sometimes because of the nature we can transport only in cargo aircraft. Sometimes based on this nature we can acceptable both in passenger flight as well as the cargo flight. But some of them are there we can't transport at all in aircraft. That is also a certain conditions. So there are also certain restrictions on DG that are not allowed to be carried on all cargo aircraft. A number of limitations are placed on dangerous goods that are permitted to be transported by air. These limitations are established by IATA and or ICAO. States and operators may impose further restrictions, and these are known as variations. So as I told you that based on its nature, we have to classify that how much dangerous nature it is and how we can transport it through aircraft. Like only maybe sometimes we can carry only in cargo flight, only we can sometimes we can take it in both passenger as well as a cargo flight. Sometimes they may not allow to carry it in any of the flights. So that is also a condition, and how we are classifying it based on the IATA and ICAO regulations. So there is a manual which is the certain rules and regulations, certain restrictions, certain procedures are there. We must follow all these procedures when we are transporting this dangerous goods in an air cargo. That is the reason why we are telling that dangerous goods is the main cargo that we want to give extreme attention when we are transporting in an aircraft. Let's see what are the main classification of DG or dangerous goods. And you have to learn it by heart, because when you are planning your career in an airport, otherwise in this logistics or shipping field, you must be aware about this dangerous goods and its classification. So we can see what all classifications are there, and there are 9 classes in DG. First one is explosives. You know what is explosives are. They are which is easily get explode or easily get with catch fire or it detonates. All this comes under explosives. Second thing, gases. There are different forms of gases are there. That's all comes under the category 2, that is gases. Third one is flammable liquids. We know what all liquids are flammable and what all things are comes under dangerous goods. So all this comes under the category 3, that is flammable liquid. Fourth one is flammable solids. There is also more classification comes under flammable solid. Next one is fifth one, that is oxidizing substances or organic peroxides. All this comes under fifth category, that is oxidizing substances. And sixth one is toxic and infectious substances. We know what is toxic, it's a poisonous things. That all comes under this sixth category, toxic and infectious substances. Seventh one, that is radioactive material. all the radioactive items comes under this 7th category. 8th one, that is corrosives, which easily get corrosive or which easily get damaged. All this comes under corrosives. And last and finally, that is miscellaneous dangerous goods. Okay, all other items which is not included in all the above 8 then classification comes under this miscellaneous dangerous goods. Okay, so these 9 classes you have to by heart, because if you are planning your career in this logistics and shipping field, you must aware about that what is DG and what are the main classes of DG. So classes is not sufficient to know the detail about this DG, because each classes are subdivided into different classes. We can see what it is. Classes 1, 2, 4, 5 and 6 are further subdivided into another divisions. Okay, we can see what is that. Class 1, it's divided into 6 subdivisions. So which is the class 1? That is explosive. So explosive is again further subdivided into 6 subdivisions. Second one, class 2. What is class 2? Gases. Again that is divided into 3 subdivisions. Okay, and the next one is not class 3, that is flammable liquid, but there is no subdivision in class 3. We can move to class 4, that have the certain subdivision that we can see. Class 4 divided into 3 subdivisions. So again 2 and class 4 having 3 subdivisions each. Explosives have class 1, that is having 6 subdivisions. Again we can move to class 5, that is divided into 2 subdivisions. Class 5 is oxidizing substances. Next we can move to class 6, that is toxic and infectious substances. So class 6 also subdivided into 2 subdivisions. So we can see these are the main 5 classes that is having subdivisions. So that is also you want to remember by heart. In that classes we can see first one is explosive, right? So what is explosives? So IATA is giving a certain explanation regarding these explosives. They are materials or items which have the ability to rapidly detonate as consequence of chemical reactions. So substances which is easily get detonate because of the chemical reaction, then we can say that is a explosive category. Okay, and commonly transported explosives. So explosive we are transporting in aircraft, that we can see what all explosives that we are transporting is. First one is ammunitions and cartridges. Definitely we are transporting ammunitions. Like ammunitions we all know that the shells, right, and cartridges which we are using in pistols, guns and all. Next one is fireworks and flares. Okay, fireworks and flares. Next one is blasting caps or detonators. Next is airbag inflators, igniters, rockets, TNT and RDX. We all know what is trinitrotoluene. Okay, and the RDX and all these things comes under explosives. And there are certain category of things which comes under highly explosive things which cannot be transported also in aircraft sometimes. Some of these explosives that we are transporting under certain regulations and certain precautions that we are taking for that. So all these things comes under this class 1 category, that is explosives. Second class, that is gases. So they are compressed gases, liquefied gases, dissolved gases, refrigerated liquefied gases, mixture of one or more gases with one or more vapor of substances of other classes, articles with a gas and aerosols. These are all comes under gases. Okay, and we can see what are the main commonly transported gases in aircraft, that is aerosols, compressed air, hydrocarbon gas, power devices, fire extinguishers, carbon dioxide, helium and hydrogen. All these gases comes under the category 2, that is gases. And we discussed that gases that is subdivided into 3. So this 3 categories, which is gases may get when it goes out of air, or otherwise it is a compressed form, then it will easily get explode. There is a chance of explosion. And some of the gases, when we ignite, it will catch fire. So all these gases, all this nature of gases which is causing for certain certain safety problem, then we can say that is comes under gases stage. That is we can say that is a class 2 gases, which comes under class 2 gases. Okay, gases dangerous goods. Next is class 3, that is flammable liquid. So flammable liquid, they are defined by the DGR, dangerous goods regulation, as liquids, mixture of liquids or liquids containing solids in solution which give off flammable vapor at temperature of not more than 60 to 65 degrees Celsius. Okay, sometimes some liquid easily catches fire, and it is which is give a flammable vapor also. The temperature not more than 60 to 65 degrees Celsius is causing. So this type of liquid that we are calling, or that we are categorizing under flammable liquid, that is class 3 flammable liquid. Commonly transported flammable liquids. So in your mind, which is comes easily is paint, right? Paint is, we can classify it under class 3 liquids. Again, alcohols definitely. But naturally, the thought which is comes to our mind is, and how this people are carrying alcohol in aircraft. Yes, but there is a limitation for carriage of this alcohol and this everything. So paint, sometimes when the check-in passengers are coming, we are not allowing them to carry paint along with their check-in. Even in their check-in baggage also, we are making them to dispose it. Okay, so paints, lacquers, varnishes, alcohol, perfumery products, gasoline, petrol, diesel fuel, aviation fuel, all these categories are comes under liquid, class 3 flammable liquid. Okay, so why we are telling this flammable liquid? Because during the takeoff time, the temperature and the pressure inside the aircraft may varies, which is easily caused to get detonate or to ignite this liquid and all, and easily catches fire. So these all things will causes a very dangerous situations. So that may leads to some damages to the aircraft and also the safety of the passengers also. That is the reason why we are not allowing all these products when during in a certain limit also. Okay, beyond that limit we can't allow it in aircraft. Sometimes some of the things like a paint and all we are transporting in aircraft definitely, but in the cargo flight. Okay, next category is flammable solid. That is fourth category, or class 4, that is flammable solid. Flammable solids are readily combustible or may cause or contribute to fire through friction. Also included are substances which are liable to spontaneous heating under normal transport condition or to heating up in contact with air, and are consequently liable to catch fire, and substances which emit flammable gases or become spontaneously flammable when in contact with water. So we know class 4, that is flammable solid, and we already discussed that class 4 having 3 subdivisions, and in that 3 subdivision, solid is when comes under first subdivision, that is when it comes under friction, then it may catches fire or ignite or detonate, or that time we can say that is a class 4 first subdivision. That may also cause dangerous situation, or it will affect the safety. Then we can categorize under fourth category, fourth class. Next one is sometimes this solid things will catches fire when it keep it in the air. When it comes in contact with the air, then also it will easily catches fire or easily get combustible. And that time we can say that is a class 4 second subdivision. Sometimes this solid which is comes in contact with water, or during it get wet, then at that time it easily get ignite or easily get combustible. Then we can say that is a third subdivision of fourth class. So these are all conditions comes under this class 4, and there are commonly transported flammable solid which is spontaneous combustible, dangerous when get wet, or sometimes when it get catches fire, when it get friction. So all these things comes under this category. We can see what are the examples. First one is alkali metals, and second is metal powder, which is easily get ignite during the friction, and aluminum phosphide, sodium batteries, matches, calcium carbide, camphor, which easily get ignite during when comes in contact with air, carbon, phosphorus, and finally sulfur. These are the main categories of items which is we are transporting in aircraft. Okay. Next one is class 5, that is oxidizing substances or organic peroxides. So oxidizers are defined by dangerous goods regulations as substances which may cause or contribute to combustion, generally by yielding oxygen as a result of redox chemical reaction. During the time of redox chemical reaction, these oxygen atoms are yielding out. That's what yielding oxygen atom, that what we are calling oxidizing substances. Organic peroxides are substances which may be considered derivatives of hydrogen peroxide, where one or both hydrogen atoms of the chemical structure have been replaced by organic radicals. In the chemical reaction, when hydrogen atoms of chemical reaction has been replaced by organic radicals, at that time that's what we are calling organic peroxide. This comes under the class 5 category, which having 2 subdivisions. Okay, so first one is commonly transport oxidizers, and other one is organic peroxide. We can see what are the main examples. Ammonium nitrate fertilizers. Second one is chlorate, nitrates, permanganates, ammonium dichromate, ammonium nitrate, calcium nitrate, calcium peroxides, hydrogen peroxides, magnesium peroxides, and potassium permanganate. All these things comes under class 5 categories. Okay, these are all cause certain chemical reaction and which is yielding oxygen ion. Some of them are which is replaced by their organic radicals. All this comes under this class 5 category. Sixth one. Next is sixth one, class 6, toxic and infectious substances. By hearing this term, you know what is toxic. That is which is causing serious injury or death when we are swallowing it, when we are inhaling it, otherwise when it comes in contact with our skin. All these times which is harmful for a person's or a nature or environment, then we can say that is comes under dangerous goods class 5, that is toxic and infectious substances. So toxic substances are those which are liable either to cause death or serious injury or to harm human health if swallowed, inhaled, or by skin contact. Then we can say that is a toxic substances. And what about infectious substances? Infectious substances are those which are known or can be reasonably expected to contain pathogens. Pathogens means virus or bacteria, right? So infectious substances, such substances which is causing expected to contain pathogens, and we can categorize under this class 6 infectious substances. Dangerous goods regulations define pathogens are microorganisms such as bacteria, virus, rickettsia, and parasites and fungi, or other agents which can cause disease in humans or animals. So all these bacteria or fungi which is causing diseases in human or animals, then we can category under this class 6 infectious substances. And commonly transport toxic substances or infectious substances are given below. That is medical, biomedical waste, definitely, which is we are transporting like blood samples or other biomedical waste which we are taking for sampling or for laboratory purposes. Then we can say that is comes under this category. Clinical waste, obviously clinical waste, and biological cultures, samples, specimens, and medical cultures, samples, specimens, tear gas substances, that is a toxic item, tear gas substances, lead components also comes under toxic substances, mercury compounds, that is also comes under toxic substances. All these are category under comes under class 6 toxic and infectious substances. Seventh one, which is something very dangerous, that is radioactive material. Dangerous goods regulations define radioactive materials as any material containing radionuclides where both the activity concentration and the total activity exceeds certain predefined values. Okay, so that's what we are calling radioactive materials, which is really harmful for human health, which comes under this class 7 radioactive material. So commonly transported radioactive materials are radioactive ores, medical isotopes, yellow cake density gauges, all this comes under radioactive material. Next one is corrosives. Corrosives is the name itself, which damaging or which deteriorating things or the metals or whatever surface it's comes in contact, that we are calling corrosives. So substance which by chemical action degrades or disintegrates other materials upon contact. When once it comes in contact with any material which will leads to a disintegrate or degrades, then we can say that is a corrosive. Commonly transported corrosive, that is acids and acid solution, batteries and battery fluids. All the acids which comes under this corrosive, which will damage the whatever things it comes in contact, then the entire thing will get damaged. Then we can say that is a class 8 corrosive DG. The last DG, that is miscellaneous DG. So all the item which is not category, it comes under this above category that we are putting in a common DG, that is miscellaneous DG. So miscellaneous dangerous goods are substances and articles which during transport present a danger or hazardous. So danger or hazard not covered by any other classes, which is mentioned the above classes, which is all other 8 classes not covered by the articles. That articles comes under this miscellaneous DG. So commonly transported miscellaneous DG are dry ice. Of course, we are using dry ice for different purposes. So in that case, we can transport dry ice. Sometimes according to their quantity, if it is only a limited quantity, we can take it in both passenger flight also and cargo flight. Not a problem. So dry ice, card ice, solid carbon dioxide. So that we are calling dry ice. Expandable polymeric beads or polystyrene beads and ammonium nitrate fertilizers. All this category comes under class 9 miscellaneous DG. Okay. So now we studied all the classes, all 9 classes of dangerous goods. We can see their image, because this is also you want to keep in your mind. Why? Because once the goods are transporting in an aircraft, because these images will be visibly, you can see in each boxes or each containers or whatever it is, or each cartons, whatever it is, there will be specific images you can see. Okay, so you can see this images in each cargo which is transporting in the, each DG which is transporting in the aircraft. So first one is explosive. We can see this light brown color, diagonal shape. That is, we can see that 1.4, that is class 1 division 4 explosive. So there are total 6 subdivisions are there. So each subdivision is showing class 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and then 1.4, 1.5 and 1.6. That's how it will be mentioning according to their nature of or behavior of the DG. So first one is explosive, that is this is the image. Second one is class 2 flammable gases. The image is like this. You can see the diagonal shape with flammable gas image is there. Gas flame is flame image is there, and you can see flammable gas class 2. Third one is class 3 flammable liquid. You can see the same dimensional shape, but there is some difference in that image, right? In the class 3, it is mentioned here, and also the flame, it's in a white color. You can see it in the white color. And the class 4 is flammable solid. Flammable solid is class 4 is blue color. You can see the color, there is a blue color, and class 4 is mentioned. Class 5, that is oxidizers and organic peroxide, that is in the yellow color. Same diagonal shape. And class 5, we can see the 2 subdivisions. So 2 images are there. One is oxidizer and second one is organic peroxide. So organic peroxide, you can see 5.2. That is means class 5 second subdivision, that is organic peroxide. 5.2 organic peroxide. Next one is class 6 toxic and infectious substances. You can see the image of a skeleton here, and so in white you can see in the black image it's showing the skeleton figure. So this showing the danger, right? Again, next one is coming class 7 radioactive materials. Radioactive material, you can see the dimension shape same like that, because we can identify a fan like thing here. That's what we are calling radioactive material. Okay. Next is coming to class 8, that is corrosives. Corrosive, I told you, acids and all comes under this category. So it is showing corrosive here, and it is also a diagonal shape. But here 2 test tubes are here, and also one is metal, other one is a hand, and the drops are coming from this test tubes, and it is degrading or disintegrating both of these things. It is both showing it's a harmful for both human and the metal. Whatever things comes in contact with this corrosives, it will degrade, it will damage that particular substances. Okay. Next, finally we are moving to class 9 miscellaneous goods. That is here, that is also diagonal shape, and here we can see half portion is marked with the black and white lines, that's showing miscellaneous goods. Okay, this is what an idea of images that we are giving for this classes, total class 9. Okay, so each image indicates each classes, and we can see different such kind of images in different boxes or different carton boxes, different consignments when we are transporting dangerous goods in an aircraft. So we must be very much cautious, and we must give certain precautions, and we must take in certain regulations for this transportation of this dangerous goods. So that's about the classes, different classes of dangerous goods. Now we can move to applicability of IATA DGR. So what is the applicability of IATA DGR? So who all are included in this DGR, or who all want to follow the DGR regulation, that we can see in this. IATA DGR are applicable to all airlines that are member or associated members of IATA. So which all airlines are there who are the member of this IATA, International Air Transport Association, then they must follow the regulations, DGR, Dangerous Goods Regulation, which is implemented by IATA. All airlines that are party to the IATA multilateral interline traffic agreement cargo. There are different multilateral interline agreements are there. So who all the airlines are including, otherwise it is included in this or the participating in this agreement, that they also want to follow the certain regulations. And finally, all shippers and agents that offer consignments of dangerous goods to these operators. So who all are transporting this dangerous goods, they also strictly follow this IATA DGR. Okay, so this is the main applicability of IATA DGR. Because of the dangerous nature of this consignment, DG can only be transported safely by air if certain principles are there. Principles are strictly followed. These principles take into account that DG transported by air will be subject to pressure variation, temperature variation, and finally vibrations. All these principles take into consideration, then only we can transport DG under safest condition in an aircraft. Okay, so what is the main principles? Pressure variation should be taken into consideration, temperature variation taken into consideration, and third one, vibration, because sometimes this vibration may cause, or there is a chance of ignition, or there is a chance of detonation, or it's easily get combustible. So these all take into consideration. There may be because of the same some changes in the temperature that may cause this ignitions and combustion, and there may be because of the pressure variation when the flight move upward or take off, at that time there will be a pressure variation. Then definitely that is also taken into consideration when we are transporting this important cargo like dangerous goods. Okay, I given a link here because there was a serious incident happened when an DG transported in an aircraft. So that when you going through this video, you can see what happened, exactly what happened in that flight. So this is what explained in here also. Total 1 ton passengers plus crew is lose their life because of this because of this incident. Okay, and it's happened because of the negligence of the certain staff. So that's what it is showing in the video. One of the most serious incident involving DG happened on 11th May 1996 when a low-cost carrier, that is Value Jet Airlines, the name is Value Jet Airlines, flight 592 crashed into the Everglades in Miami, Florida. It's happening in Miami, Florida. All 110 passengers and crew were killed as a result of fire on board caused by the crash. Investigations revealed that the expired chemical oxygen generators, because this is due to the expired chemical oxygen generator used in aircraft in case of depressurization. For that reason, they kept this expired chemical oxygen generators that took the life of this 110 passengers plus crew, were placed in the cargo compartment in 5 boxes marked as COMAT, that is company owned material, by Value Jet's maintenance contractor in violation of FAA. Okay, that is Federal Aviation Administration regulations, which forbids the transport of hazardous material in aircraft cargo holds. They already forbids this material, but still they taken in this aircraft. At the result was they lost their entire life. The oxygen generator were also not covered properly, was also the reason for this incident. This is what happened in that in this video. You can have a look on that.
ValueJet was a company which, to put it simply, was a train wreck of an American airline. Between the years of 1993 and 1997, the airline became infamous for its terrible safety record and lack of any progress to address significant problems at the airline, even once pilots and flight attendants had walked away from their jobs out of safety concerns. Certain officials at the Federal Aviation Administration wanted the airline grounded from as early as 1994. On May 11, 1996, ValueJet Flight 592 crashed into the Florida Everglades, killing 110 people. It was revealed that an onboard fire had occurred after hazardous cargo had been inappropriately stored in the cargo hold. What was on board the plane, and what were the shortcomings of the airline which contributed to the accident? On October 26, 1993, the then new budget airline ValueJet began operations. ValueJet was one of many airlines which had sprung up in the United States around this time. A low-cost airline boom in the country had given air travelers a lot of choice when traveling by air. As a low-cost carrier, ValueJet purchased older planes which other airlines had phased out of their fleets. The plane most abundant in their fleet was the McDonnell Douglas DC-9. The DC-9 had long since been a staple of American domestic operations across the country. Over 900 of these planes were produced between the years of 1965 and 1982. By the 1990s, the plane had become more antiquated. As such, the DC-9 became a go-to choice for low-cost carriers looking for cheap second-hand aircraft. The DC-9, even though a popular plane in its day, was not without incident. The plane itself was infamous for the fact that over 15% of the planes that were ever built had been lost over the years, with over 3,500 fatalities. ValueJet operated a total of 44 of these planes. ValueJet, as an airline, had been embroiled in controversy for most of its life. The airline had reportedly boasted about how little they pay their workers. They forced their pilots to pay for their own flight training at the airline, gave flight attendants only minimal training, and demanded exceedingly long hours from their employees. They had been involved in lawsuits with airlines such as TWA and Delta over landing slots, and outsourced a lot of the groundwork that airlines would normally operate themselves, such as maintenance. Although ValueJet did have some in-house maintenance facilities that are based in Atlanta, in Miami, for example, some ground services were outsourced to a company called Sabretech. In the 12 months before the accident of Flight 592, 2 ValueJet DC-9 planes were involved in major incidents. In June 1995, ValueJet Flight 597 suffered a catastrophic uncontained engine failure after an aborted takeoff in Atlanta, which resulted in a major cabin fire. The cause was damaged internal engine parts. The plane was destroyed in the incident with no fatalities. ValueJet had been aware of the problem but did not address the issue due to a lack of a budget to fix the engines, but intentionally kept the plane flying despite this. 7 months later, in January 1996, another ValueJet DC-9, this time at Nashville, Tennessee, had suffered an excessively hard landing due to pilot error which had injured 5 people. Among other maintenance anomalies at the airline, another ValueJet plane had reportedly made a total of 140 flights with a hydraulic system which was prone to leaking before it was ever fixed. Between 1994 and the day of the accident of Flight 592, there had been 129 emergency land-ins made at ValueJet. ValueJet had the poorest safety record in the United States, with an older fleet than most other airlines, including its competitors and legacy carriers. Flying out of its base in Atlanta, Georgia, a ValueJet DC-9 plane is making a trip on May 11, 1996 to Miami, Florida. The plane, registered as November 904 Victor Juliet, was 28 years old in 1996 and was first delivered to Delta Airlines all the way back in May of 1969. Delta operated the plane up until 1992, before the airline sold it back to McDonnell Douglas. The plane was then sold to ValueJet in 1993. Whilst in operation at ValueJet, the plane had suffered numerous complications in the 2 years leading up to the incident of Flight 592. These had included 8 recorded emergency landings. By the time of the accident, it had accumulated 68,000 flight hours, with over 80,000 flight cycles. Piloting the plane was Captain Candlin Kubek, age 35. From California, she had just under 9,000 total flying hours, over 2,000 of which were in the DC-9. Her co-pilot on the day was Richard Hazen, serving as first officer. At 52 years old, he had nearly 12,000 flying hours. Alongside his captain, he too has roughly the same amount of time logged in the DC-9. Once arriving in Miami, the plane was delayed for just over an hour due to mechanical problems with the plane. This was on top of the fact that the plane was also delayed from leaving Atlanta earlier in the day due to unexpected maintenance involving the circuit breaker for the right auxiliary hydraulic pump. The left fuel flow gauge was also reported to be inoperable. For days at this point, the autopilot had been defective on this plane as reported by other pilots. Earlier in the day, before the trip to Miami on a flight into Atlanta, the intercom system which allows the pilots to communicate with the flight attendants in the cabin had broken and was now inoperative. The public address system had then also broke on the flight prior to Flight 592 into Miami from Atlanta. The passengers on that flight later revealed that the cabin crew resorted to using a megaphone to perform their basic duties. A Sabertech mechanic in Miami was called to the plane during the turnaround to try and troubleshoot the problems with the plane. These issues could not be fixed in Miami, and the plane was given the OK to continue flying. 105 passengers embarked the DC-9 plane. Along with the 2 flight crew members, there were also 3 flight attendants for a total of 110 people on board. As well as the passengers' baggage, Flight 592 will also be taking some extra cargo for the flight to Atlanta. This included 3 DC-9 landing gear tires and 5 cardboard boxes which were labelled as company materials, or COMAT for short. These boxes contained 144 chemical oxygen generators. The purpose of these generators are to supply oxygen to passengers in the event that the oxygen masks would be needed. They had originated from a purchase of 150 of these generators by ValueJet. As a passenger pulls on their oxygen mask, it pulls a firing pin on the generator which provides enough energy to start a chemical reaction to create oxygen, which then flows out of the container. Once activated, the casing of these generators can become extremely hot, reaching temperatures of over 250 degrees Celsius. To safely stow these generators, a safety cap needs to be attached to prevent any accidental activation of the firing pin. Documentation on how to do this was provided to Sabertech by ValueJet. These oxygen generators had come from previous planes, and were not properly stored with the correct protective measures in place. 144 of these generators were then placed into cardboard boxes and left in a shipping area on Sabertech's grounds, with no markings or anything to identify them or their contents, or even be labeled with the fact that these items were hazardous. In the days before the accident of Flight 592, they had been sitting in a holding area for ValueJet property at Sabertech in Miami. On May 8th, a store clerk at Sabertech had arranged with the director of logistics to transport the boxes of generators to Atlanta as they had become clutter in the holding area, and expecting an audit, they wanted these boxes moved elsewhere. The oxygen generators had then been repackaged, with around 2 to 3 inches of bubble wrap on the top of each of the contents of the boxes. The boxes were then labelled as ValueJet Comat as aircraft parts. According to the store clerk, these boxes stayed at the Sabertech store where they were until the day of the accident on May 11th. The paperwork was then filled out to describe the contents of the boxes. The oxygen generators were identified as empty. The clerk who had packaged the generators did not even know what they were, as none of the mechanics had told them what was inside. They saw that they had green tags attached to them, and then assumed that that had meant that they were empty. In reality, these oxygen generators were not empty. The generators had been packed in a way that made accidental activation much more likely, as following the accident, many of the inactivated generators were found with unsatisfactory securing measures. ValueJet supposedly had a hazardous materials policy, in where they state that the airline would not engage in the transportation of any hazardous goods. There were some items with exceptions. Chemical oxygen generators were not on that list of allowable items. The 5 cardboard boxes containing the 144 oxygen generators were then loaded onto ValueJet Flight 592 on May 11th, where they had been loaded into the forward cargo compartment. The ramp agent had gotten the flight crew to sign off on the cargo that was being loaded into the cargo hold, without ever knowing the exact condition of the oxygen generators. The forward cargo compartment on this aircraft was classified as a Class D compartment. This classification of a compartment had meant that it was airtight. Any fire that would occur in these cargo holds are supposed to burn out once oxygen is exhausted. Smoke and fire detection was not mandatory in these cargo holds at the time. After the lengthy delay in Miami, Flight 592 left the gate at around 1:40 p.m. and taxied out to runway 9 left. At 2:03, air traffic control cleared Flight 592 for takeoff. The first few minutes of the departure went as expected. In the forward cargo compartment, however, it is believed that one of the improperly packaged oxygen generators which was loaded onto the plane had activated and a fire had begun in the cargo hold. For a fire to occur and spread, there needs to be a fuel source, which in the case of Flight 592 could have been anything in the cargo hold that was flammable, such as the cardboard boxes which the oxygen generators were stored in. The nearby tires, which were also loaded into the same cargo hold, would also have been extremely flammable, and would have produced excessive noxious smoke. Heat is another key component of fire. The heat would have been generated by the high temperatures, which the casing of the oxygen generators can achieve once activated. A fire also needs a supply of oxygen. In the case of ValueJet Flight 592, it's rather obvious where this oxygen supply would be coming from. Because of the lack of any smoke detection equipment, it is unknown on exactly when the fire had actually started. It was not until 2:10 p.m. when the pilots knew that something was wrong, when an explosion was heard on the flight deck. The investigation believed that by 2:10 p.m., the fire had already escaped the cargo compartment below, but had not quite burned its way through to the cabin just yet. The explosion that was heard was one of the tires in the forward cargo compartment exploding. This had meant that the fire had been raging for several minutes without anyone knowing. Had the cargo hold been equipped with fire detection equipment, it could have bought the pilots several minutes of valuable time. Instead, by the time that they knew that there was a danger on board, it was already at a crisis point. The fire had begun burning its way through the ceiling of the cargo hold and the flooring of the cabin, where crucial aircraft wiring runs through. Captain Candlin Kubek identified an electrical problem with the plane. Seconds later, on the cockpit voice recorder, sounds from the cabin can be heard as fire and smoke had become visible in the cabin. The sounds of panicked passengers could also be heard. The flight crew called for a return to Miami Airport with air traffic control, less than a minute after a problem first came to their attention. A cabin crew member entered the cockpit requesting that the passenger oxygen masks be deployed. The onboard fire is burning its way through the flight controls. At 2:11 and 38 seconds, Captain Kubek then asks for the nearest possible airport, probably knowing that arrival at Miami is looking ever more unlikely. This was the last radio message from the plane. It is likely that noxious smoke had filled the cabin and cockpit, which left the pilots unconscious. The cockpit voice recorder then only captured the sounds of the air rushing against the plane and the audio tones from aircraft systems. Radio messages from the tower now go unanswered. The cockpit voice recorder ceases at 2:13 and 25 seconds, less than 3.5 minutes after the pilots first knew that the plane was on fire. ValueJet Flight 592 crashed into the Florida Everglades in a nose-down position. The crash had killed 110 people. The plane had only been in the air for about 10 minutes before it crashed. The investigation from the National Transportation Safety Board in the United States determined that the probable cause of the crash was a fire in the cargo hold, which had originated from the activation of one or more of the chemical oxygen generators which had been improperly packaged and loaded onto the plane. ValueJet had failed to oversee activities at Sabertech. Sabertech surrendered their operating license and closed. The airline also failed to ensure compliance with maintenance training and hazardous materials requirements and practices, to quote the accident report. Blame was also directed at the Federal Aviation Administration for not requiring fire and smoke detection equipment to be installed on all classifications of cargo compartments. The FAA was also accused of not appropriately monitoring maintenance practices of ValueJet, or the airline's oversight of its subsequent contractors such as Sabertech. In the aftermath of the accident, the aggressive cost-cutting business practices of ValueJet and other low-cost carriers came under scrutiny. The FAA grounded ValueJet on June 11, 1996. The airline did resume operations on September 26th of that year, but with a much reduced fleet after complying with FAA requirements. Heavy negative publicity meant that the airline was in financial ruin. ValueJet quietly merged with another airline and became AirTran without much publicity, where that airline operated until 2014, before it was acquired by Southwest Airlines. ValueJet as an airline was never prosecuted. This left many outraged with how poor the airline's safety record was, including the relatives of the victims of Flight 592. It should be noted that the CEO of ValueJet is still in the airline business, despite their airline failing to adequately perform its duties to protect their passengers. He is currently the CEO of Reliant Air, another low-cost airline which itself has had its own string of incidents in its years of operation.